MMP, it was meant to be our holy grail for political representation, but is it still fit for purpose? Politics professor Richard Shaw says in The Conversation that politicians may be weakening the system. More leaders ruling out working with certain parties and going off the last few elections, a typical left and right bloc are beginning to form. So around the panel, Dan, should politicians be ruling out working with others? And let me ask you, do you think, Dan Bruskell, MMP is still fit for purpose?
Yeah, look, I must admit, I've been having my doubts, and we do play this game where people rule each other in or out or whatever. The reality is that under MMP, you're expected to attempt to form a government, so I'm not sure that those promises are worth all that much. But I guess the thing that worries me, though, is the accountability in elections. You have parties campaign on a platform, you vote for it, and then they get into government and say, oh, but because of our coalition, we're going to do all this different stuff or different things. And it's quite hard to actually say, well, I elected you on this platform to do this. They can say, well, in the coalition agreement we had to give away that and this, and it just feels like it reduces the accountability of governments in many ways because everyone has someone else to blame.
Right, Ruwani.
Yes, it does. That's exactly right, Dan. Like you campaign on something, you believe in something, and then, we had to change it because of this minor party that polls less than 9% is suddenly the tail wagging the dog. I mean, I voted for MMP back 90s, when we had to, because I felt that representation was important. But, yeah, it's...
Well, we've heard a big response. What have we got? Greetings, Wallace. MMP is useless for mainstream progress. I think National and Labour should be put in a locked room and not let out until they form a set of policies to government. Get rid of the extremists as they only care about 5% to keep their jobs. Guys, STV, which is what we voted for originally, before those who know better, said it was too complicated for some people, said Merle. So, Tracy Martin, MMP, after all these years...
Yep.
What do you think?
Well, first of all, let's remember why we did it. So neoliberalism, the 80s and 90s, ripping apart what was our social fabric. That's why the country decided that we would change the way that we voted. So let's not forget that. Let's also not forget some of the really good things that it did. The representation of women under MMP has grown exponentially. The representation of minority communities inside this country, the Parliament is more representative. And I do not believe it would have happened without MMP. However, and I've had these conversations with major party politicians who are currently sitting in the beehive, it's about time a major party said no and sent the country back to the polls. It's about time a major party says we are not prepared to sell out what are our major platforms. So I agree with Dan. We're not going to trade them off just for power. And I would have that plan B, in my back pocket at the start of the negotiations so that all of your media and comms is ready to go to say to the country, it's not us, we tried to be reasonable, but that guy there wants this and it's a step too far. So we're going back to the polls. And I tell you what, it'd straighten up MMP overnight.
Interesting comments.
I love it. I love that. Imagine the drama of that.
As a political journalist, I'm always up for another election. Keep them coming.
Right. Yeah. Is there another, Dan, would there be another first past the post done? What about STV, Dan? Something else?
Yeah, ranked choice voting.
What do you
first
reckon?
Past the post might be
Like
a way
Australia?
to go. I mean,
yeah.
But the other thing is that the UK doesn't have MMP, and yet they're breaking into a multi-party system anyway. It's just happening. So it might just be that this is the natural state of things, a more diverse, divided world with different people with different ideas. Maybe it's just an old-fashioned idea. Two parties can represent everyone.
There's a lot of thinking, Rwani, coming through that this is not what we signed up for. This is just not what we signed up. A lot of people are saying, actually, the tenor is, I wouldn't actually vote for MMP now. I don't want these parties seemingly guiding what they see as guiding the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the number of MPs that MMP forces us to have as well, that amount. But I guess as the left and right blocs lose that support, these splinter groups, the extremes rise in prominence. But when you're trying to form a government and get those 62 seats,
Okay.
you need all your friends. But yeah.
Tracy.
Well, our extremes aren't that extreme at the moment. So,
It's true.
we should be grateful our extremes aren't that extreme. I mean, we've got Winston Peters and David Seymour, and we've got the Greens and the Māori parties. They're not that extreme. However, and I do remember a conversation during the 2017 negotiations where I think we had, I can't even remember now, what did we have, like 11 seats or something like that. And they were worth more because I remember a statement being made, they're worth about 15, but they're definitely not worth 20, right? So all of those things come into play during that period of time. But is what we should be discussing the pushing out of the middle? Should we, rather than be talking about the electoral cycle or how we actually work with each other to create a parliament that is representative, should we be talking about the fact that we're being pushed to the right and to the left and what's doing that? Because most New Zealanders are actually in the centre.
Tracy Martin, interesting thoughts there. Rwani Pereira, Dan Bruskell on Wednesday's political panel.